Hello and welcome, beautiful friends. I'm Kendra, and you're listening to the Renewed Minds podcast, the show where people can be heard, known, and cherished for their own mental health story. Welcome back to the Renewed Minds podcast. Today we are going to hear Jamie Klassen's story. So I'm really excited that she's on the show with us today. So thank you, Jamie, for coming.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, as you said, I'm Jamie Klassen, and I am married, and I have been for 7 years now. Lived in Kelowna for 6 years, and we have one boy who's 4, a girl who's 2, and one on the way in December. Yeah. So busy.
Super busy.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just jump right in. Tell us a little bit about your mental health story, but starting at the beginning. What did that look like for you when you were a child?
Yeah, so growing up at a really young age, I was labeled as shy and introverted. I had a brother who was 4 years older than me, and just from the beginning, it was very much that I was in his shadow because he was like the funny one, the one that everybody like knew, and I was just known as Jared's little sister. No one really knew my name or anything. But I just, as people kept saying, oh, she's just shy, she has nothing to say, she's shy, it just really drilled into my identity, and I would just hide. Like, I would hide behind my mom's leg, or like I hated to be in front of people at all. When I was like starting school age, like anytime the teacher would call on me to read out loud or like do presentations, I'd literally just get ill to my stomach, and like the room would spin, and I would like practice reading if I knew it was my turn next, just so I wouldn't mess up, look like a fool kind of thing. Aww. And so like it felt like the fear of man was really instilled in my being at a really young age. Okay. Yeah.
Quick question. What is fear of man?
Oh, yes. Good question. Fear of man is it's when like the opinion of other people become the most important opinion, and it's almost like I can't mess up, or I don't want people to see me because I don't want to look stupid. Mm-hmm. Their opinion trumps your opinion, trumps God's opinion, just everything. Like, you're just living life so that people like you. Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
Okay, so then when you were a young adult, what did your story look like as a young adult?
Yeah, so as I got older, into my teen years and young adult years, it kind of turned into isolation. And so I would spend a lot of time by myself, like not able to get out of bed, or just kind of hiding away. Every time I felt like too overwhelmed, I would just stay in bed. I don't know. I didn't do much. And because I was told like, you're shy, you're introverted, I was like, well, I guess I need to be alone. But yet that just dug me into a deeper sadness. And it did come out in self-harm and just talking to random people on the internet that I shouldn't be talking to, because I was trying to look for validation somewhere. Yeah. But I was too afraid to leave my room to get validation in the real world. So just very messy. But also just this like side of I had to look perfect. And so when I did leave my room, I looked like I had everything together. So no one knew about this hidden life that I had behind closed doors. Okay. Yeah. And it honestly didn't all kind of come to a head until I met Dane. And then, it was almost like I couldn't hide anymore because I had this husband all of a sudden. So we get married, we get married, and all of a sudden I have this person who's like, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you in bed today? Or why have you not done anything? And I'm just like, get off my case. Like, I'm just need a break. Like, go away. Yeah. And like my whole growing up years up to this point, like mental health wasn't really a thing that was talked about at all. Yeah. It's more of like recent years that people have started to
Totally.
talk about it. And so I had no clue that fear, anxiety, depression was like even a part of my life.
Right.
So after like Dane and I got married, he kind of challenged me to go get help, go seek counseling. Like he's like, something's not right. This is not normal behavior. And so I was like, sure, whatever, I guess. So I went to this guy, and after our first session, he diagnosed me with a anxiety disorder, which I was like, this guy is a fool and must have got his license on the internet, because I do not struggle with anxiety. Like I'm good. And then it was a couple nights later, I had my first panic attack. Not my first panic attack, like I got a lot of them, but it was the first time I could identify, oh crap, that's a panic attack. I guess that guy knows what you're talking about. Yeah. And so it kind of became, once I got the diagnosis, like I felt like I could actually like label myself, like, sure. Oh, cool. Now I know it's what my deal is. I'm an anxious person. I'm anxious. That's who I am. So then you can see the self-identity again, labeling myself. So shy, introverted, anxious, depressed, like, But I learned techniques through counseling that help me make habits to create healthy habits, which isn't a bad thing with anxiety, but it was still, anxiety ruled my world. Yeah.
So, Kate, thank you for sharing. We're going to continue. So what happened next? You moved to Kelowna. What happened when you moved to Kelowna?
My world exploded again. No, we moved to Kelowna after our first year of marriage. And it was actually really cool because we had prayed before we moved here that we'd find a community that would challenge us and push us closer to Jesus. And like 3 weeks after moving here, we found just that community. And so we got connected with a house church network here. And we got connected with Kim and Darlene Unra, who, because we were in the house church network, we were going to start like leading house churches with them. And a part of that deal is they were going to start discipling us. And so as we started doing discipleship with them, their biggest thing is, like, what does Jesus have to say about that? Or we're going to take you to Jesus. And this was all, like, I knew that Jesus spoke, but this was all very, like, what? Like, we're going to go to Jesus on these, like, matters that you could probably just solve for me. So it got to a point that, like, every time we were going to meet with them, I was like, crap, I haven't asked what Jesus thinks, because that's the first thing they're going to ask. And so I actually, like, it turned into a habit of asking Jesus first before I, like, went to Kim and Darlene with any of my problems I was having. That it's like now, fast forward 6 years later, got to a point that I don't actually need them to take me to Jesus or, like, to help me deal with problems. Like, the first thing I do is, okay, Jesus, what do you want to tell me or show me in this situation? So they created that habit. But one of the first things that Kim did with us was called a 10-20-30. And so basically you're asking Jesus for 20 truths that he has to say over you to combat lies that you might be believing about yourself. So the shy thing and the anxious thing. So you asked Jesus, and Jesus downloaded, like, I did not give you a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power, love, and sound mind. You are a lion. You are worthy. Like, just all of these things that he spoke. A lot of it was scriptural. A lot of it was just, it was beautiful. It was hard to hear. I got like 30 things, and Kim's like, okay, now go cut it to 20 and make sure it's the ones that you have a really hard time saying out loud. And I was like, great, I can't wait. So anyway, so for 30 days, 10 minutes every day, you're supposed to read the 20 truths out loud. Or anytime you struggle with it in the day, you just say it out loud, and it rewires your brain to think of the truth over the lies that you might be believing. And that was just like such a huge shift for me personally, because it went from I'm an anxious person to be like, no, I'm a child of God. I am a daughter of the King. Like that kind of stuff. And so it just really rewired my brain to see myself as Jesus sees me. So instead of like me looking at myself, I'm looking up at him who's downloading it to me. Awesome. Yeah. And just kind of, it sounds weird, but like really cleansing my mind of all the lies that the world tried to label me as and tries to label us, because the world is really uncomfortable when they can't identify you. But Jesus already gave us an identity, so we just have to ask him, and he'll tell us. So yeah, that was a huge shift for me, like the 10, 20, 30. Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome. Okay, and then what happened when you had your babies?
And then my world exploded more. So I guess it was just like it was kind of like a bomb. So I had Arlo in 2019, and I was doing super good with my mental health. I was like, I'm so good. Like, postpartum's going to be so easy. Super naive, firstborn. Yeah. So I have Arlo, and it went very dark and very foggy really quickly. It was very different than I thought. Motherhood was very different than I thought it was going to be. Newborns were very different. I was never around babies, so it was just, I felt like I was just, all of a sudden, the floor got taken out from under me. And just anxiety came back and just crippled me. So when I was in an emergency, I was like, "Hey, Kim, like, I need you to take me to Jesus because I'm having a hard time." That's also an important thing, is like, sometimes when because it's such a big thing and we can't get to Jesus, that's when we ask the people who we trust to take us to Jesus.
Exactly.
So he came and did a bunch of sessions with me and just taught me, like, in my anxiety, because anxiety is a really vague, big thing. Like, it tries to be a really big, vague thing for you, so that you are trapped and you feel crippled by it. But he really was like, okay, we're going to ask Jesus, what exactly are you afraid of in this moment? So usually in the mornings I'd wake up and not want to get out of bed. So I'd be like, okay, Jesus, like, what am I scared of? And often it was like, Arlo's not going to get enough to eat that day. And I'd be like, well, that's not true, because I'm going to make sure he gets enough to eat. Like, he's going to eat, kind of thing. And then it just felt like the power of that anxiety, once I found a label and what exactly it was I was afraid of, it just lost the power and the grip on me, and I was able to get out of bed and go. Awesome. And that's not saying like I was good all day. It might be like 5 minutes later, oh no, I'm having more anxiety. Oh, I'm afraid I'm never going to sleep again. Okay, what's the truth I need to know, Jesus? Because the other thing is asking Jesus, like, you give him the lie, and then he replaces it with the truth or a gift or something that, like, like, that has more power than the lie ever had. So he'd be like, actually, when I was afraid, like, I was never going to sleep again, he says, actually, sleep doesn't sustain you. I do. And I was like, whoa. Wow. Roger that.
So good.
So yeah, it was, and so I'm not sitting here today saying I don't struggle with anxiety ever. Like, that's not a thing. Anxiety is not who I am. It does not, like, I'm not trapped by it. I'm not bound by it. Because the first, like, because you know how anxiety, you feel it in your body before it comes, like, usually your stomach, or you're like, I always get a weird feeling in my chest. And I'll be like, as soon as I feel that physical thing rise up in me, I'm like, oh, what am I anxious about? What is this thing? And it's often, like, sometimes it's big things, but it's often like, oh, I have to drive downtown today, and I'm nervous about not finding a parking space. Okay, Jesus, can you show me your love in this? And I'll, like, drive downtown, and there'll be this, like, parking space lit up in gold. Just kidding. But, like, they'll be like, here you go. I got you a parking space that you can be confident enough to drive into, because I'm also, like, not a great parallel parker. And it's just, like, he cares about these little things. And I think a big lie I was believing is he didn't care about that stuff.
Yeah.
But he like wants us to go to him about everything, like this constant communication.
Totally.
And like, yeah, he didn't give me a spirit of fear. So as soon as I feel that fear, I'm like, that's not from you, Jesus. Like as soon as you don't feel, like he says, a spirit of power, love, and sound mind, and as soon as any of those aren't lining up, you know there's a lie somewhere that you're believing.
Yeah.
And the big one was like sound mind. Like it literally, sound mind means that we're like sane, we're with it, we know, we have clarity. So as soon as I start feeling that like fog or like feel like I'm not sane, I know that there's a lie that I'm probably entertaining that Jesus wants to take and replace with what he's actually saying over me. Yeah.
Yes. Something like peace.
Yeah. lots of peace.
Yeah.
And that his love, his perfect love casts out all fear. And like the promise there is that it's all fear. It's not just some. And that was like another thing is like realizing and actually believing what the Bible had to say.
Yeah.
So they're not just like nice words. It's like these are actually promises that he's saying over us, that we can actually take our thoughts captive. Like our thoughts are captive to the King.
Yeah.
They are not like, they don't control us. We get to, because we have the authority from Jesus to actually like take control of our own thoughts towards kingdom.
So good.
So yeah, I don't know, just those, it's not just those things, but those are some of the tools that I've been working on.
Awesome. So what ended up happening after postpartum?
Well, after postpartum, thriving in motherhood.
Yeah. Like you were good
Yeah.
after those techniques.
Yeah, I was good. Still had like the down days that we all do, but I knew to go to Jesus, and it didn't affect me in the same way. I was free. I felt freedom for the first time.
Come on.
And I felt hope for the first time, that I didn't have to be bound by mental health, but that I actually could have freedom in it because Jesus says that I could. And so fast forward, we ended up having another kid, which was like, that's like a testimony in itself, because after Arlo, I was like, I'm not having kids again. We had another kid. So the fact we're having a third, like it's all such a, like the beautiful story of Jesus and redemption, and even just redemption of motherhood and redemption of womanhood for me. Yeah. So then 2 years ago, so at the beginning of this, we were talking about how fear of man ran my life, like so afraid of what people thought. So when we joined the House Church Network, one of the requirements was to do outreach. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, outreach is the worst. Like, that's great for the evangelists, but I am not talking to strangers about Jesus. Like, no thank you. But then, and Jesus has a sense of humor. So then 2 years ago, organization called Disciple a City came to Kelowna to do a evangelist conference that the House Church Network was going to go to. And I was like, this is going to be the worst. I did not want to be there. We get there. The whole time I'm like, crap, I'm feeling things. Like, I'm feeling conviction. I'm feeling excitement. Like, what's going on? And then they ran like a school after that. And both Dane and I knew we were supposed to go to that school, which I was like, no, I don't want to do this. Like, everything inside of me was like, but then just again, he did not give us a spirit of fear. So as we started doing evangelism and learning these tools that they were teaching, it just, like, Jesus just took the fear out of it and showed me, like, the truth in it, and that it actually brings us, like, closer to Jesus by making him known. Funny, hey? So now Dane and I actually lead outreach night every Wednesday for the past 2 years. And, like, if someone told me that 6 years ago, I would have laughed in your face. And now I'm like so excited. I'm so passionate about like evangelism and sharing the gospel and equipping the church on how to do that and do it in a way that's like, I mean, it's always going to have that bit of like, like scary, but like Jesus gives us a spirit of boldness to do this. Like this is like, we are actually created to share the good news with people.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at today. And I can say that like fear of man does not run my life at all anymore. And anytime it sneaks in, I'm like, no, because Jesus' opinion matters more than my own or anybody else here. So
Awesome.
yeah.
What an amazing testimony.
Thanks.
That's so awesome. So, kind of just wrapping things up, what would you say to somebody if they were struggling with mental health?
I would say learning to hear Jesus' voice is the most important thing that you could do for yourself. I think about the story of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. So before he's going to the cross, he goes to the garden with a few of his closest friends. And there's two things that he does. The first thing Jesus does is he tells his friends, his disciples, I'm feeling deeply troubled. Like he tells them that he's feeling scared because Jesus felt fear, like he was human. And I would argue probably the worst fear than I've ever felt because I don't know when I'm going to get led to a cross to die for the sins of the world. So he tells his friends to pray, and his friends in that story, they fall asleep, and let's hope our friends don't fall asleep when we ask them to pray for us. But something that it showed me was like, okay, so find like 2 or 3 like close friends that you know are going to pray for you and take you to Jesus in your like desperate times when you need them to like take you to Jesus. They don't fix you, but they take you to Jesus. So he does that, and then he goes and he separates himself, and then he goes to the Father, and he asks him to take this from him. And the Father says, like, no, my will be done, kind of thing. And Jesus' perspective changes at that point because it goes from, I don't want to do this too, but your will be done. And that was something that, as a Christian, it's all about the Father and his will. And that a lot of times in situations where it feels like chaos and you're just begging Jesus to change the circumstance, he probably isn't going to change the circumstance, but he's going to change your perspective or your heart or like give you peace or hope in the midst of the chaos. And something that I've said over and over is when you feel like when Jesus gives you his peace, peace is the only thing in the world that you can't fake. I would say if you're struggling with mental health, go to people who will take you to Jesus and like go to Jesus. That is honestly, it like sounds so simple, and I know it can be harder than it is, but it really is that simple. And Jesus promises that when we seek him, we will find him, and that like his sheep know his voice. And as you go to him, you're going to like recognize it more and more and more. And then it's just going to become habit and easier. And these things that had like a huge grip on you are going to loosen and let go.
Yeah.
Because they have no power anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So amazing. Wow, Jamie, that is such an incredible testimony.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you came and shared it with us today. Do you have any final thoughts?
Jesus loves you.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming and listening to this podcast and listening to Jamie share her story. If you know somebody who is struggling with mental health, please send this to that person. And if you know that you have a story that needs to be shared, how Jesus set you free from your mental health struggle, please contact me and we'll get in touch and we'll set up another interview. And remember, you're not alone and you are loved.